Hello, everybody. Welcome to the API Security Trends and Shifting Left webinar. That I'm Nicholas Moy, the CISO for Stoplight, and I'm here with Noman Ali, product manager, a very talented colleague. And we are going to, walk through today. I think just, can't cover everything in the time we have, but we just wanted to, spend some time talking about security trends and ways that people can make real changes that aren't just about buying tools, but about what they're doing to make those improvements. So thank you all for taking the time to join. The agenda that we're just going to walk through real quick is, we're going to start off with just talking about some emerging trends. I'm sure everyone, sees many lists of different trends. We're not trying to drain the ocean here on what they all are. I think just highlight a few to just kind of put some context out there, recognizing everyone is kind of at a different place in their familiarity with security, API security especially too. And then we'll spend a little bit, I'll talk about what shifting left looks like in API security and why that matters. I know shifting left gets used a lot, so we'll get specific there. And then I will hand it off to Noman, and he'll walk us through how Stoplight can help and like real steps you can take using Stoplight to help you with your security concerns as you're on your journey to better API security. As we're jumping in, I think I just want to, and selfishly, because I care about this more than anyone else at Stoplight. It's like for us, APIs are so core to software development in today's world. And for me, and part of my motivation for joining the company was that I really believe security is a huge part of that. Having worked on so many APIs in my previous roles, and just understanding the many challenges for building internal APIs, public APIs, and and feeling at the time back when I was in those roles that there weren't as many tools and practices that were in place. And so I think it's just really great that we have the opportunity to connect with you all who are here on the webinar to, I think, get a chance to dig into this. Go into some of the API security trends that we have seen. And so, we'll have a couple that we'll cite, the many great companies doing work specifically in this space. And there's one from, SALT's State of the API Security report recently, and they're talking about just malicious traffic is 2.1% of overall API traffic. I mean, whether it's 2.1, 2, 3%, it's a huge number given just the billions and trillions probably of all API calls out there. So it's just kind of crazy to see that that number is growing, and reminds me of, in the early days of trying to do edge protection on public facing B2C websites and things like e-commerce, you'd be like, wow, a huge percent of our traffic are just bots, so we're trying to deal with that. A huge percent of our traffic are fraudsters, we're trying to deal with that. Oh, great. Now we have a huge percent of our traffic that are people trying to attack our website. The same is, same can be said for APIs. APIs are kind of no different in that sense, that there's a ton of traffic out there that is malicious, somewhere in between being, a pesky bot and an annoyance, a fraudster. And because it's programmatic, the thing that freaks me out the most when I'm talking to my engineering colleagues here at Stoplight is that it's programmatic. Our problems in APIs are not just security problems like a website or a payment processing web page, but it's programmatic. So when we have a problem, that means, when there's a problem in API security, someone can do bad things at scale. They can do it quickly, they can do it efficiently. Freaks me out. And just the types of attacks and types of problems And how it's happening is like it is growing in so many ways. And just to put some color around it, from survey respondents, for this particular one that we looked at, it's just like people are seeing it's not just that they have vulnerabilities in production APIs because they're looking at it only after it got pushed to production. The PR has been merged and like, oh, now it's out there. Some security team is doing some scan, some third party is doing a pen test for PCI compliance. They're like, you got all these critical vulnerabilities. Now you have to go fix it. And everyone has a bad day. Now all these tickets come in to Jira and wherever. And now it's like, oh no, we have vulnerability problems. We got authentication problems. And the kind of weird thing is like, since my earliest days in security, I look at this list and there are some things where it's like, wow, why are these still this? It's like the same set of problems. They're just bigger. Everything's bigger now. There's just the amount of APIs, amount of API traffic, amount of web traffic in general, amount of clients and consumers of all of this. Um, it's growing quite a bit. And like, there's these things aren't mutually exclusive. If you want to get, really into it between a vulnerability, a breach, a denial of service, these things have compounding effects. Like, and if anyone's a statistic nerd, they're going to have interactive effects. Like if people were trying to say, what is the thing that is the biggest problem? Well, you can't just try to isolate any one of these things without, I don't know, an infinite amount of data to really figure it out. It's like there's a general set of things that need to be addressed, a general set of practices in protecting APIs. And it definitely seems like that's reflected in the problems the industry is seeing. And there are more APIs now than ever. And that's just putting, I think, more scrutiny and focus on like, well, what are we doing about that as, as stakeholders, as product managers, as, engineering leaders, as architects of APIs for our customers, for our partners, for our suppliers, for our internal teams, for our developers. What are we doing about that? And what's happening? And it's just like, well, security is a concern. And I think, just as a practitioner, it's like, well, maybe we have to take it past being a concern. We have to figure out like, how do we turn this from like, hey, security is a problem. Everyone gets it. It's always in the news. People are freaking out. But what can we do about it? I don't like the doom and gloom stuff personally. If you catch me, offline and for drinks after work kind of thing, I just hate the fear mongering kind of stuff. I think everything happening in the industry and all these trends are just context in the real world that we live in, just like the weather. If it says it's going to rain, if we have to worry about, smoke from wildfires, you just prepare yourself. You get an air filter, you get an umbrella, you plan accordingly. I don't think it's like we cannot make everything like it's end of the world, guys. What are we going to do? But there's a lot we can do. And I think it's important to just keep that in mind. And then also, I felt this from my colleagues in application engineering teams or, engineering operation, DevOps teams, where it's like, well, all these security things that people are talking about, all these security concerns are just slowing us down, slowing down the pipeline. Product managers have stuff they're trying to work with the team to deliver. And it's like, yeah, no one likes to slow it down, right? No one wants to be holding the quote unquote, holding the bag on slowing down, the company's velocity on product improvements and features for our customers. But then it was like, well, let's just not wait. Let's actually, make sure we're doing something about that if we have this concern. And weird thing is that I feel like, I don't know, and this is not statistically proven or anything. The sense I get anecdotally is that some people I talk to, they hear API, they think it's like, oh, it's in the background, it's obfuscated. Only developers are going to interact with the API. Only our internal teams will interact with the API or our integration partners. But like, is your API on the internet? People are going to interact with it. People, you have no idea who they are. People, bots, organized groups, organized crime. I mean, it's people don't just go to websites. People will look for any endpoint on the internet, doesn't matter. So, what can we do? What can we do about that without just saying like, oh, it's doom and gloom and it's hopeless. It is not hopeless. There are things you can do. And I strongly believe there are things you can do that don't just slow down development. And that's by quote unquote shifting left. How do we operationalize those concerns instead of just saying, hey, we have all these concerns? Well, what am I supposed to do about that? And I want to add that, like, I just don't believe in whether tools, frameworks, practices, methodologies. No one thing is going to solve everything for you. Just like, we've all been there when someone came into your staff meeting and said, like, we have this new thing. It's going to solve all the company's problems. I know all of you have felt this before, but shifting left can minimize issues on security because it's just you can chart it out. It's an economics problem. It's like, if I only have so much time and I have so many problems, and these problems statistically are always bigger later on in the development life cycle, if I address some of them up front, they don't compound over time. So I can address as many of them as I can with my limited resources. I can't eliminate them. Security is not a perfection game. It is a risk management, and for some who have a very low risk tolerance because of the industry and regulations, it may be close to a perfection game and it has lots of reassurances, but even someone in banking would tell you they have many lines of quote unquote defense, that it's what security is doing, it's what audit is doing, it's what the controllers are doing. And because there have to be reassurances and testing and a lot of those things are about where they are in the timeline and shifting them left or right, and for that matter. I mean, I don't think I have to convince anyone here. It's like, why do it? You've got a lot at stake, whether it's like product timelines, product roadmap timelines. You have important problems you want to solve for your customers. And you don't want to spend all of the money and time that you don't have to do things that aren't core to the user experience, whether your customers are other businesses or whether your customers are individuals. You want to get it out there. You want to get it out quick. You want it to work well. You don't have all this time to go, build this ultra elaborate, complicated system of, security things and then have all these problems and have some security team come tell you, this was me in my past life, like, oh, your new API, the shiny new API you just launched, yeah, buddy, it has so many vulnerabilities. My recommendation to the CTO is to shut it down because it is going to cause us problems. I definitely don't want to be that person having to tell someone that, and I don't want people to experience that. They really don't need to. And I just want to talk through kind of like, so what does this look like then for a real company? And this is taken from a few different real companies, so there's no, you can imagine what it's like. And obviously every company is different, but so for enterprise A, what they do today is their security team, which is stretched very thin. They have many requirements because they have to deal with PCI compliance. They have to deal with GDPR. They're a global company, and they process payments. So they have checklists. They have a checklist that they host in the company's intranet, whatever they're using. And the checklists are talking about, well, for your API, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Those checklists are in Excel or Google spreadsheets or whatever your preferred spreadsheet product is. And then they have policy documents in addition to the spreadsheet of checklists of what your API is doing or not. And the policy documents are like, oh, this is the data classification standard. Are you handling this kind of data via your API? Is it sensitive, highly sensitive? Is it, financial information? Is it personal data categories? Are they super sensitive personal data categories? You're like, wow, that's really fun. I'm a developer here, and I'm like in my first month, and they said it was going to be super exciting, and I'm going to go write code. Oh, then some security person is like, hey, these are the requirements for building these APIs. Here you go, have fun. And the security team, well, turns out there's probably like 1 to 1,000 in terms of ratio for security engineers to developers. And the security team is very small, overworked, understaffed. And they're just doing their best to try to keep the company safe, but they're not, perhaps, maybe there's a better way to what they're doing. But right now they're like, this is what we got. We're pushing out all these requirements via documentation to our end users. And I'm sure that experience sucks. Well, I've seen it before, so it's not great. And that's what it looks like. And then there's some testing they do very late. That's way after the design phase. For over here, this is my left, so I don't know what if that looks like the left in via Zoom. But then it goes, they're like, okay, we do a test here, we catch vulnerabilities, you have to fix it. Well, most of it's like, well, if we catch it here, you've just spent all these times, tickets and story points and grooming sessions. You've been going through these and hammering them out. And now you have this problem. And now someone's like, nope, sorry. This is a gating requirement. This is a gating check. Your PR, nope, it's not going to go out on time. Now we can't get it out there. We can't go collect, feedback. We can't A/B test it with our existing API. Not fun. Not a good way to make friends. What's going to happen at Enterprise A? Enterprise A is doomed. Like, if nothing is happening today, it's because they're lucky, because they're already slowing themselves down. They're making it harder, and it's like I think I got some advice about my about how to be healthier from my doctor recently after a couple of years of the pandemic and not eating well. He said, whatever exercise you're going to go do the one that you're going to do. That's the best one. The one that is, if it's so hard and you don't do it, you'll just never do it. Security, if it's so hard, no one will ever do it. If they have to go, if all our employees have to go decipher complicated, just static documents in Word and Excel to do the right thing, wow, we've basically said, like, for you to do the right thing, you have to put in this much work. Good luck. Hope you figure it out. And it's just a recipe for unhappy people on all ends. The security team feeling like they're just not going to be able to do the right thing for the company and the customers and their data. The development teams, the product teams are like, well, how are we actually supposed to do our job, serve our, meet our goals and mission of the company and solve these problems for our customers and provide, industry leading features and capabilities? We got to just do this earlier. And Naman will get more into some of the practical steps of what that looks like, because, you can, if you can operationalize these requirements into something that people can pull from Git repos, that people can interact with, and as you update your security requirements, and as you're basically transitioning from security in documents to security in the way people actually work. I don't want to just say security as code, because I think that's just like sounds very specific, but really, what does that look like in a more modern workflow? And what does that look like for APIs? And how do we do that at the design stage? And I fundamentally believe it's like having a conversation at the design stage, and then having things you can interact with and assets and resources to test the security of your design is a lot cheaper and faster than having someone tell you, like, you've got these problems in production, this is critical, you have to fix it now. This is high, you have 24 hours. This is a medium, you have 30 days. Nobody likes that. I don't like that. It's just not fun. And this is this is just a fancy picture, I guess, to go through. I think how important it is to just like, we just got to move this to before we go test, and and I think I'll admit that like I love I think a lot of the thinking that people have and kind of more, relatively newer development practices. Whereas like when I was at Expedia, we had a lot of legacy environments. And so there was only so many things we could do in kind of a cloud native, SaaS native way. And there were a lot of things we were just limited by our infrastructure and environment. And so we couldn't always do, good security design as early as we wanted to. And there was always this tension. Whereas now I think it's like, with tools like Stoplight, hey, we can do a lot of these things much earlier up front to protect our APIs that are a lot better than manual checklists and Word documents and, working the way that people building technology products work. Most importantly, I'm a big fan of this. I talk to a lot of security companies. I have the utmost respect for people building tools and solutions and services in the security industry. Obviously, I'm a huge customer of these things my entire career. But a security tool or a security product is not security itself. Kind of like treadmills aren't health, you running on it is healthy. Security is an activity. It's something we just have to do. It's not limited by what we're buying. We can do security. And then I think the more of it we can do with the tools that we have, it's just a great starting point. And I won't read through the whole list because I want Navan to go through like how this actually operationalizes and the more exciting stuff. I don't want to bore you anymore. There's just a lot of great resources out there. There's some no-brainer things. Anyone building APIs, anyone architecting, designing, working with development teams, product managers, engineers, just to make sure, like, please go do these things. This is not a comprehensive list. There's a lot. OWASP has an API top 10 that they published the first rev in 2019. They're actually going through the process of updating a new one for OWASP API top 10 2022. It's just great resources out there. It's great resources in that, OWASP is definitely the brain trust when it comes to web application security, and APIs are obviously an extension of that. Since a lot of you folks are probably responsible for dealing with public APIs that are on the internet. And I think build good relationships to like pull in security earlier and often. I know security teams can sometimes have a reputation for being very prickly. I hope they're not all like that. And I think it's just because they're under-resourced and trying to protect companies' data and customers' data, usually without all the things they need to do it. But I think if we pull it in earlier in the design stage, and if you're not already doing that, I think it can have huge benefits, even if it's just the conversation. Just starting exercising that, I think will do a lot of good for a lot of folks. And then there's like, just don't do basic authentication. Any authenticated kind of endpoint, just don't do it. You cannot do it in HTTP. You have to do an HTTPS. You just have to have strong authentication for any important API out there on the internet today. That's just got to do it. And for us, we have a page you can go check out, stoplight.io/security practices. Just read more about what we do. We're always looking for ways to improve. We're not perfect. We're always, investing time. I'm always creating headaches with my colleagues to say, what can we do better? What can we do differently, both in the product, in our, what we do in the back end for the company and our infrastructure. And so, we're as invested as everyone here is in just making this better. So I think now I will hand it over to my colleague, Navan, who will go into the fun stuff for using Stoplight.
Um, Thank you, Nick, for those valuable insights into why security is important and why shifting left is very valuable. So I'm Naman. Like Nick mentioned before, I'm a product manager here at Stoplight, and I look at the governance piece of it. What I want to do today is just continue with what Nick was talking about in terms of API security, things you can do, and map that onto how Stoplight, the product itself and the platform, can help you with like practically implementing some of those practices. So the first one, I won't spend much time on it. We talk about it a lot. Do API design first. API design first is helpful for a lot of reasons. You get better user experience and developer experience, spend less time changing things later. But in terms of API security too, like Nick was mentioning, you can bring the conversation much more left if you're talking about it in the design phase. And for that, like I think the first primary step would be to start designing those APIs first, putting them into an open API file or some other format, and bringing up a design review process, which should include some sort of security reviews as part of it too. And Stoplight is built around API design first. Our tooling promotes it, helps with it. So you can use Studio to start creating those open API specifications. We're having reviews and just generally bringing visibility into your API program. And visibility helps a lot too. Just catalog all your APIs, do API design first. And I think that's a good start to start having those conversations around what does your API security look like and what can you do to make it better. Now to get into one of the more important features within Stoplight that you can use to actually improve your security practices, which is a recent feature that we launched called Style Guides, which I'd get into a bit more as to how you can go about creating a style guide and what it does. But generally, once you have some sort of security conversations going on, it's good to put those practices into a set of guidelines, set of rules that you as a company believe in, that you should follow. Start simple with them, and we'll go into what those would be and just generally go and iterate from there. What I've done here is I went into a few companies and got their style guides. So this is what it looks like. Generally, web-based style guides, a lot of text that Nick was mentioning. If you put that on your developers or designers to read through large text every time they're looking to design an API and go through the security practices, it's going to be hard to start getting those implemented because these live outside the developer in the API lifecycle management workflow. This is a separate activity that they have to go do, find those problems and find those guidelines and then potentially implement them. And it's also a pain to maintain it, promote, and enforce. Like we said, you updated, people aren't really aware of those new changes, easy to mess, and not really a fun developer experience for sure. And this is good though. You have at least a set of guidelines, but in the modern world or with some new tools, what you can do is automate some of these style guidelines or rules that you have. What that would look practically is, say you have an API design environment where your designers or developers are designing these APIs. Now they could get feedback right there and then as to what they might be doing wrong. Some things that you really care about that you don't want to pass through might be errors. There might be just information that you're trying to give or just hints as to this is something that you can do better. All of this could be automated into predefined rules that can live as part of the design workflow and also the review workflow. Once you're performing reviews, you could see how much of those are passing or failing. It's finally, you can automate it as part of your CI/CD pipeline too, where you're not letting PRs in or letting PRs being merged if some of these rules are failing. Don't be too strict about it. Like I think there's always a balance between enforcement and just like general pushing for good practices. But this is what Stoplight has built and and promotes is creating these style guides and automating them as part of your API design work. Now, what should a security style guide contain? Nick covered a lot of this too, which is start with the basics. OWASP API top 10, like Nick mentioned, is something that's out there. You could start with those, follow good security schemes, enforcing HTTPS, checking rate limiting, having validation properties, like your strings shouldn't be just like, shouldn't allow anything to go into them. There should be patterns. Objects should have minimum or maximum items. These are small fundamental things, but easy to miss. But if you put them as part of this automated style guide, it is much easier for developers to start doing these things and make it a habit out of it, because nobody likes errors on their development environment while they're building things out. So hopefully, once you do create a style guide with these basics, at least get these going, and you can do all these as part of the automated style guide. You can always, once you have this basics, iterate over it, depending on your organization, your security posture, you can always add more things to it. But there's just a basic set of things that most security style guides should contain. Now, we have a basic idea of why we should automate style guides, what they should contain. Now, how do you get started with those? We're doing that within the platform itself. As of today, we actually have another preset, but generally what we want to do is not make it hard for you to get started with these basic rules. So you're looking to add OWASP top 10 rules to your API security style guide. You can do that now just by click of a button where you can enable this. Enforcing HTTPS, again, is a no-brainer. So there are security presets that we have put out there that you can just enable and start using. And we'll keep putting these out, so keep a lookout for them. But generally, once you do start creating a style guide, start with these presets that Stoplight has. And what just these presets could do is, I was looking to create like a new open API here that I had, and it gave me 11 errors and 8 warnings already. So that's a lot of things that I'd be pushed towards fixing, adding the right error responses, not leaving operations unprotected, adding rate limiting headers. These are things that you just get out of the box once you start using these presets. And then from there, once you have these presets enabled, if some of them don't make sense, you can always tweak those. But starting with them, then I think, and making them part of your development and design and development workflow, the next thing that is very good to do is tap into the knowledge wherever it is in the company. For us, it's Nick. So we'll go to Nick and ask, like, what else can we add to the style guide? So make a set of things that you want to add onto these basics that we've already provided, and then add or tweak rules based on those. Adding documentation and potential fixes is always a good idea, because once these developers get these, or designers get these errors within the platform, they want to look at what they need to do to actually fix it. And as easy as you make it, that is the right recipe to these actually being, these security guidelines being followed. Once you add the documentation, the next step would be to publish the style guide. Stoplight's the latest feature now allows you to share the style guide across your workspace and actually make it the default. So any new projects that start with that people create would start with the style guide itself. So you just basically be putting that as a default. You can always go and retroactively add it to your existing projects and see if there are things that you can improve on. The idea being make the security style guide easily discoverable. So you'd have documentation within the workspace that talks about what the style guide is. And people don't necessarily need to read it, because once they go into the designer itself, they get live feedback right there and then as to what they're doing wrong and what they can potentially do to fix it. And this is a great, I think, milestone in terms of just creating a style guide, making it part of your workflow, publishing it. The next step, and that is once you have a bit more buy-in into the style guide itself, is to enforce it into your CI/CD pipeline. There's content out there as to how you can do that with Stoplight using different version control systems. The general idea being that, say, you use the Git workflow for your API design, which I highly recommend you should do. And somebody's looking to add a new endpoint to a branch, they create a PR and a review is being performed even before that review. As part of the checks within your version control system, security could be a big check, where if you're not following the important things in the security style guide, you wouldn't be allowed to merge the PR. And that really reduces the time on those reviews too. Now, the security team, which like Nick mentioned, is generally not very large, doesn't need to look into things that are already established, things that can be automatically detected. They can focus on the more nuances of security while these basic things are being catered for in the CI/CD pipeline. So this combination of creating a style guide and enforcing it as part of your review workflow and your CI/CD pipeline really helps streamline some of the things that you can do with an automatic style guide. So this is about style guides, and certainly, like I mentioned, there's more presets coming to the things like OAuth best practices and API key best practices. If you all have ideas as to what other things we should put out in terms of presets, I'd love to know that. But there are other things that in other features in Stoplight that help with security too. Another recently launched feature is proposals, which is primarily a bird's eye view and also something that you can dig into of changes happening within your API landscape. It's easy to, especially if you have a large number of APIs being made within your company by different teams, possibly different geographical locations, it's easy to miss as to what's being added, what's being removed or changed. And that could potentially result in security issues falling through the cracks. So the idea is with proposals, you can keep a lookout for any changes that are happening within your API program and hopefully catch them earlier, again in the design phase, rather than catching them in the development, or even worse when they're out in production. So this is what proposals is today. Do give it a try, and I think it certainly helps with the security story out there. What we're looking to do after that is also potentially add the linting checks that we were talking about, or security style guides as part of this, so you can see if there's a security issue in one of these changes that is happening much easier than like having to go look into your version control system. So it's really combining the change management with the style guide piece that we're looking to go ahead and do at one point. Another piece that is potentially coming soon into the Stoplight platform is design libraries. The idea with design libraries is to share reusable components to promote consistency and not really be duplicating things. So things like models, headers, parameters, but also security presets, right? Like you have a security scheme, a specific scheme that you want to use across your APIs. Instead of people having to build it out every time, the security team can put out a template that everybody can use, so that there's less chances of mistakes being made there. Same goes for headers that you might want to include, or other things that really help with the security posture of your company. So design libraries should also add on to some of those security features that we already have in Stoplight. I hope this was helpful in terms of doing it in Stoplight. And yeah, you can leave your questions. Like, do you have anything to say to finalize this or end this?
We do have a couple questions.
Yeah, no, I think we could. Yeah, I think question probably a good time for that.
Yeah. So first one we have, let me look between the chat and the Q&A. The validation properties part, is that less of a consideration for an all read API?
Yes, I think that would be, and Nick can add on to that, but generally it's a good idea to not allow anything to be passed to your strings or even objects, like putting a limit to it. But if it's an all read API, I think it would be less of a consideration.
Awesome. And then the other question we got is this style guide, is it a suggestions document or somehow integrated into IDEs?
like I was showing in some of those screenshots, and you can try it out for yourself too. Once you create the style guide, one, it's automatically integrated into the visual designer that Stoplight has. So your developers or designers would get live feedback, much like ESLint would give it to you, and some of other IDEs as errors as you write these API documents. But it's not just limited to the Stoplight Studio. If you're using, say, Visual Studio Code to write open APIs or other things, these style guides are built on our open source tool called Spectral. And there are good integrations out there for tools like Visual Studio Code or other places like the CI/CD checks that we were talking about, that you can just use it anywhere using the CLI tool, and extensions for other IDEs. So any environment that you have, these style guides can be made part of your review workflow. With the visual designer, it's just that it's automatically integrated and there's not much of a setup there.
Awesome. Any other questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A. All right. Any other final thoughts? Maybe Naman, you can show them again how to access the public style guide templates.
Oh yeah, I can do that. So let me just quickly go back to this. All right, so the presets that I was showing, the two OWASP top 10 and enforce HTTPS. As part of your workspace, if you go to the styles tab, there's a manage style guides button where you can access these presets. It's just a case of enabling this on your project or your workspace, depending on how you want to go about it. If you want to enable it across your workspace, just enable it, and it should start. These errors should start appearing for people using these style guides in their projects itself. And also there's a way to, within the workspace, to set it as a default, so new projects always start with it. There's also documentation out there in terms of public style guides as to the ones that we have available. These are not the only ones. These are the security specific ones, but there's stuff around URL guidelines, and examples documentation that you really should, as part of a comprehensive style guide for your APIs, be adding on to, like, what kind of casing do you want for your parameters? Or should you always be adding descriptions to your open API files? It's a combination of these security style guides and other API design considerations that you can really create a comprehensive style guide and like enforce it as part of your CI/CD pipeline.